Morning, it's now 10 a.m. and I will call the Sewage and Water Board Operations Committee meeting to order. Special counsel, please call the roll.
Director Howard. Director Cole. Director Duplessis.
Present.
Director Kennedy. Director Thomas.
Present.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. We'll now proceed with the one presentation item. Ms. Johnsey.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me. If you could pull up the slides for me. We're going to be presenting now on the organizational transformation that we've been doing with the Smart Meter project. We've been talking about it a lot for years, and we wanted to give you some of the details of what that really truly means as we go through the process. So we're going to be talking about very specific details to kind of give you an idea of the complexity of how we change the way that we do business. Guys, this is not the right slide deck. This is not the right slide deck, but we will continue. Okay, I'll give you a project update. We have over 133,000 meters installed, so that you know. That's 95% of the population. So we are continuing to install meters even after the substantial completion of the construction contract. We do have over 90,000 registered users of the customer portal, which is very exciting. That's 69% of our population. That means 69% are on the portal and using it. Our goal is 75%. So 1 year out of the rollout, we're continuing that process. We also have 4,614 Ally meters installed. Those are the super smart meters we've been talking about. So those are the meters that have pressure and temperature. It's a little bit difficult to do this without the slide deck, so we'll see if we can get the right one.
Let's stop for just one
Let's give
second.
it a pause and let them catch
Check with
up.
them to
Yeah.
see if they have it to
Yep.
put on the computer, and if not, we'll get it.
No, this is it. It was a live link.
Okay, we'll pause for just a couple of minutes.
Approval of the proposed 2026 holiday calendar. This year's calendar is really no different than previous years. It's 14 holidays. It mirrors the city's holiday schedule, and we have no curveballs this year in terms of calendars, in terms of holidays. I think last year there were 15 because of the Katrina Commemoration Day that we had. So this year's back to sort of a normal holiday schedule. Again, that's 14 holidays. So asking for your approval or consideration and approval of that proposed calendar.
Okay.
Do we have a copy of the calendar? I know you mentioned a memo, but do we have a paper copy or something to view?
Yeah, I think the resolution was forwarded, a draft resolution was forwarded, but if you want me to, I can.
You want to read them off for us?
Sure,
Maybe?
sure, absolutely. I can do that if that works. Yeah, New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Day, Mardi Gras Tuesday, Good Friday, Memorial Day, Juneteenth, Independence Day, Labor Day, Indigenous Peoples' Day, Thanksgiving Day, Veterans Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and New Year's Eve. Those are the 14 holidays that are proposed.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution R-197-2005, Sewage and Water Board 2026 Holiday Calendar.
So moved.
Moved by Director Thomas, second.
Second.
Second by Director Duplessis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. All right, we'll move back to Ms. Johnson's presentation. Are we ready?
Need a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Can we do the second?
That's supposed to be, I think it's after, the next action item's after the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
In your package, the holiday calendar was there, so if you have your, we'll bring hard copies in the
Yeah,
future, so you have.
Thank you.
You can have that.
It just takes a cartridge. Yeah, you just have to replace the cartridge. Yeah. Oh, you gotta use it, that's the thing. Yep. Because it will die. Like this one I hadn't used in a couple of months and I had to like dip it in, I think, vinegar.
Because I like to use this sign, but I like to use it at the top.
Yeah.
And then I go to get it.
Yeah, let's try, yeah.
Okay, here we go again, guys. Round two. All right, here is the graphic associated with that project update. You know, what's really exciting about this project, it's not just about getting meters in the ground, it's all these extra things that we're talking about. And that's kind of what is around this organizational transformation. So again, 133,000 meters, 95% of the population. That 90,000 was a really big milestone for us with the online portal. We're really excited about that. Because if you remember a year ago, we had to actually delete everyone from the customer portal. So they had to actively sign up. So we had 90,000 accounts actively signed up through the portal. And then we have that 4,600 Ally meters installed, and that will come into play later in this project, in this presentation. We're also substantially complete with our construction project. So from here on out, the installations will primarily be installed with our internal workforce. And then,
Can you give us an idea of what's remaining? I know we talked about 95%. Is there a category that's remaining? Some issues that you've seen that will prevent us from being fully complete?
yeah, so this is right in line with the national average when you do these rollouts. The reasons why you'll have ones that didn't get completed are unusual plumbing that you might find. Maybe there's a tree that's grown over the meter box. Unfortunately, that happens, and of course, we're sensitive to that. Our large meter installations, they're a little bit more complex. Specifically, our old legacy meters that are in the ground, you can't physically get them out of the hole. So the manhole, you can't actually get them out. So we're having to design alternates around that and working with those customers to do so. So this is right in line what you'd anticipate with substantial completion, and we're working with a variety of mechanisms to complete. We haven't stopped, so just so everyone's aware, we're continuing. We want it to be 100%, and we're actively going after that, but that's just where we are right now.
So you're talking about ones like, I did some work at the fairgrounds and they had a meter that was literally in the middle of the street. Ones like that, that are kind of that last
Exactly.
5%.
So the fairgrounds, I believe, have several that are left like that, and it's mostly because at some point in our history we used what's called dual service meters. So you have a very, very large meter, 6, 8, and 10-inch meter. We have about 800 to 900 of those in our population, and they literally built the manhole around the meter. So they installed the meter and then did a manhole. So we can't physically take the parts back out. And there's no way to chop it up in the way that would make sense. So we're looking down the line with alternative paths to avoid having to dig up an entire street and rebuild a vault or a manhole.
Gotcha, okay.
Excellent, thank
So
you.
it's that's the 5%?
Yeah, and you have a few residential customers here or there that for whatever reason needs replumbing or needs work in the street to complete, and that we're working through. And then this is part of that transition from installation and operations. But another way that we can look at it, and the whole point of this program was to get real-time actual reads for our customers. So this is a very exciting graph for me because in November, you know, we had under 2,500 customers that didn't receive an actual read. And again, it's those really difficult situations that are hard for us. That's a really, really small number. It's very exciting for us. It's about 1.5%. And so we've come a really long way from where we were, you know, several years ago. So it's a really big deal. We're excited.
Did you have any issues that you see or foresee in the future for registration on the portal? I know you had said the 69%. What are those hiccups? And are there any actionable items that we need to do to fix that and kind of increase for 2026?
Well, we far surpassed where we were previously before we had the portal, and we've far surpassed the national average as well. What's considered best in class is that 75%, so that's where our goal is, and we do believe that we can get there. So we're still pushing towards that. We have talked about help centers so that customers can potentially come if they need computer help. All of our customer service reps are trained on how to walk people through. The best thing about this portal is you can mirror. So a customer service rep can mirror exactly what the customer is seeing. So you can walk through in real time what's going on and help them through any of those challenges. So, you know, it's a great portal. It's robust, and everyone's feeling really comfortable with it. So we're getting a lot of great feedback.
Do you have any kind of idea of the demographics of the remaining, 21% or 31%? Is it senior citizens?
I don't have any user demographic like that, yeah. Okay, so now we can go into some of those process updates. And the first one is going to be regarding tampers. So this is a little background, and it's very verbose, and believe it or not, this is cut down from where we started because it's a lot of information. So when we're talking about how you do a process, the first thing you have to do is understand where we are now. So mapping out those processes and the roles and responsibilities of those processes. So this diagram that you see is our updated process. It's not where we started. Where we started was much more cumbersome, but this is our streamlined version. So when we do that process mapping, we have to make sure that we understand the cross-functionality. It's very, very clear on where those delineations are. We have to make sure that our customers are aware and we're able to communicate around what we're doing and why. We also have to be able to track it. You know, we want to make sure that we have the staff to understand what's going on, to be able to pull the data and to hold ourselves accountable for what we're saying we're going to do. And then, of course, we have to make sure that we have the right mechanisms in place to do any associated billing or fee collection if it's applicable. In this instance, because of a tamper, that is applicable. We're talking about fee application. So this is an example of what we're doing for the tamper policy. We've also made sure that the policy reflects appropriately what needs to be said. And then we're doing stakeholder training similar to this presentation. We're making sure that everyone's aware of what's going on. This is the revised, the big change in the policy is the revised fee structure. What is set about in the Code of Ordinances is that first-time offense, that $350 fine, because it is tampering or obstruction of meters is an unlawful violation that has applicable penalties. The specific penalty prescribed is $350. What we have found in this, with this new technology, what the technology does is it actually has an immediate alarm. So we know instantly if the technology is not operating as we would intend it to, and if it's a potential tamper. There are several alarms that will trigger that's a potential tamper event. These are cut wires, these are a non-communication alarm, things of that nature. So that's when we know, hey, here's a population that's not operating as we should. So instead of us waiting till a meter reader comes by every other month, now we know nearly instantaneously something's going on. And so this is a different data set that we want to be able to action off of. And so our proposed changes are that to have our first, if there's an unintentional tamper. So an example, a industrial lawnmower comes and wipes out our radio, or a plumber unintentionally broke a wire, something of that nature. If it's unintentional and it's feasible, we're giving the customers the benefit of the doubt, letting them know what's going on, sending the letter on how to make sure that they're protecting the technology and their requirements around protecting the technology, and then we're not fining them anything. So we're making sure that communication is heavy and customers understand. The first intentional occurrence of a minor tamper, that would be that $350 fine. That's what we're doing now. That process would continue. But this is what would be different, is that major or recurring tampering. So these are customers with multiple offenses, customers that are putting in straight pipe, customers that are putting in a dummy meter. That means they're taking out a meter and putting in a different meter, because then they wouldn't be billed for that usage. Here, the intent would be for the fee to be $1,000 for these customers.
Would, in either case, if there's damage to the, the first intentional occurrence, is that enough to cover the repair cost of the meter, if it was cut wires, or is that on top of repair costs?
So this $350 fine will cover the repair costs for the equipment if it's a minor. This is not a full damage scenario. This is a part that needs to be replaced, part of the system. That's why the more severe has the higher fine, because it's more costly
Okay.
to repair
But the
that.
intent is that the cost of the fee at least covers the cost of the repair.
Correct, that's the intent. Something that we're doing differently that we haven't done in the past is, now that we have we've created a work order management system for this. We have photos, we have the reports, so our findings are very easily supplied to the customers or any entity that might require it. Because we want to make sure that we are really tight in the documentation in these scenarios.
Talk to me a little bit about the due process. When a customer has received a violation, what is that process like? Or what is the process?
So if they've received a violation notice, so if there's an unintentional tamper event, we've physically surveyed the location and we've determined that this is an unintentional tamper event. So they will be mailed a letter, sent a customer portal notification, and it will also be put on their account in CSM, so that everyone is aware that this notification has happened to this customer. If there is a first-time intentional occurrence, the $350 fine, that's our current process and how we are actioning off of these tampers. That means that their water's not being shut off. We are fixing the tamper event, so it's operational again, and then we're putting in the fine. So this is not an immediate water shut off.
But that's not due process.
Yeah.
So due process would bake in the ability for the customer to either provide a response or appeal, even with the first occurrence.
With the zero fee?
Yeah.
With a
That's what we're
notification
referring to
letter?
in the letter, would say, here's your instructions for appeal,
Okay.
contact us, provide your response. So that would be included in the written violation.
So there's gonna be a date and a hearing for them to talk, like, speak to someone live when it
Yeah.
comes to?
Yeah, that's the due process. Once you look at what they're saying, compare it to our data, then we have the ability to, have the customer in to hear their side. So I think that's part of the process, right?
Yes.
Even with the $0.
There's no impact to the customer except for them to know that their equipment was damaged. So we're letting them know there was damage to your equipment. Usually we get an email back and we talk to them about it. It doesn't happen that often. Again, this is to let them know that this is equipment that exists in their ground that needs to be taken care of. I mean, that's where we are.
Okay, and so with the first one, you talked about an appeal process, but what about the opportunity for feedback once the violation is identified? Because for me, that would be more in line with the due process procedure, not an appeal of a finding that's already rendered and decided.
So right now, the only times that we are shutting off a customer's water would be when a straight pipe is found, and that involves our security office. So there is a formal investigation and notification through our security office. Otherwise, it's
referring to the
notification.
assessment of a $350 fee.
The $350 fine.
Mhm.
We have, Stan, can you talk on that a little bit more? Do you have any?
Why don't you come up?
So my concern is that there may not be a due process procedure before the assessment of a $350 fine.
Right, and yeah, I think I understand. So it will go through the investigation process, and what will happen is operations will say, you know, through the investigation, we determine that this is a first offense for the customer. They get the letter with the information of how they can call and submit whatever documentation. So may that be a police report, you know, some other evidence. While the fee may be initially placed on the customer's account, pending the results of what they send in to us, we would remove it. So it would go through their process, but we're not gonna shut off their water. We're not gonna,
So they get the notice of the 350. They have the ability to contact us and provide additional information,
correct,
and you review that.
correct.
And if it's found to be that there's something in error on our part, we can nullify the 350.
Exactly.
Can this be provided in writing, because I'm still having problems with it as well. So,
The flow chart show the decision, kind of the decision tree or the?
I'm not
Because that would help, because right now we're talking about, we're doing an investigation, which was fine when you
Yes.
said investigation.
This is a
That's
functional
fine, but
flow
when you do
chart.
the investigation, is there an opportunity for the customer to respond and provide their side of the story in that investigatory process?
Yes.
There is.
Yes.
Okay.
before the fee.
Before the fee is assessed.
See, that's the problem.
Yeah,
is-
no, and I think you guys make a really fair point, and it's probably something we do need to look at as far as timing, because I do think we're talking about timing, and a lot of things can run parallel. So I think that's something we can definitely take back and look at the timing of the assessment of that fee.
Yes.
But also too, if, let's say we believe there's a violation, they get a letter saying there's a $350 fee. If they feel it's an error, they don't pay it and they contact us and then it's reviewed. So there is a review process. It's just a question of
Timing.
the timing of it.
Yeah, I think it's the timing. And I don't know off the top of my head, Becca, I don't know if you do, if it says how long the customer has to respond.
I'd have to look. I know we
can't
we're
remember.
using the same language that we've been using in this process for quite a while, but we'll make sure that that makes sense. And there's an associated timeframe before maybe something's posted.
Yes.
Because I think what would make sense is you have X number of days to respond. If not, you will be assessed.
And with the process like that, you would be affording your customers due process.
Yes, no, thank you. Very good comments. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Okay. So this is, this fee structure with those comments will be one of the things that will be in the resolution for action. The next policy that we looked at is hydrant meters. So you've already seen these process updates. These were presented at the F&A committee in September. But basically, a hydrant meter is when someone needs water temporarily. So these are under construction. Sometimes these are festivals, things of that nature. So you're hooking up to the hydrant. To do that for safety, you need the meter so that we can know how much water goes through it, and also a backflow assembly. So make sure you're protecting the integrity of the water system. Hydrant meters historically are tricky because it's a mobile piece of equipment. And so it's something that utilities struggle with around the country is how do you do it? How do you track it? How do you manage it? So it's something that we wanted to look at because it's a smaller population. So our current process, as you can see in blue on the left, and the things that we're revising on the right. The big change here is the deposit value and the way that we're billing the customers. The reason why the deposit needs to be increased is because the backflow assembly in the meter, $1,500 does not pay for those things. And how the policy was written is if that equipment was lost or stolen and a police report was obtained, our deposit doesn't cover our costs of our equipment. And so that's the increase there, is to pay for that equipment.
All in one, the meter and the backflow assembly?
Yes, it comes together. It's really heavy, so how the contractor installs it depends on, you know, they have to have the proper support. But yes, it's one assembly that they do get.
Is it refundable, or is that, I apologize, I don't know. Is it refundable deposit?
Yes,
Okay.
it's only to cover the costs in case
Yeah,
it's
okay.
lost or stolen.
Okay.
And then the ready-to-serve fees, it's just clarifying what was already being charged. So on the right side is just the clarity for what they would expect to be paid. We've also changed to have a one-year mark recalibration. It's just the reality of the time and manpower to do so. This is an example of the customer communication. So we have around 240 hydrant meters currently deployed throughout the city. We haven't systemically communicated with these customers in the past, so we're trying to do so now. So we determined the full accounts, what is active versus what's not. We have a lot of old accounts that we need to have cleaned up, some as old as 2008. These companies don't exist anymore. The meters are most likely not recoverable, so we're going through that process now. We found that over 50% of the hydrant meters that are deployed are not currently in compliance with the rules and regulations that they signed on to get that hydrant meter. So we're communicating with them to try to see how many customers we can get in compliance. We've gotten a lot of really great feedback on that, which is exciting. We're also changing the way that we read these meters. So this was, we would ask the customers to send in their monthly reads via an email. As you can imagine, it wasn't a super high compliance rate. We will now be physically reading these meters each month because we have the staff that can do so with our transition to smart meters. All right, any questions on hydrants before we move on? Okay. The next is backflow enforcement. I'm just gonna give a little background on this one because it's always a nice refresher. So backflow occurs when contaminated water comes back into your clean drinking water system. They're designed to only flow one way, so the backflow event is problematic. Usually this can happen if you have a break further down the line and the pressure change from that break will suck something back in the line that you don't want sucked back into the line. And so that's an example there. So you can see the break in the graphic and that sucked back in the pond water into the water system. Of course, that's not what you want. These are the most common cross connections. So there are cross connections at people's homes. So the first two, swimming pools, water fountains, irrigation systems, these are very common. Some have easier fixes to provide protection than others. You can see you can have an air gap, which means don't have your hose sticking in your pool. Take it out. Boom, done. We're good to go, air gap. You can also have reduced pressure assemblies or vacuum breakers. So these are all things that can be installed at your personal home. They do require annual testing through our system, and that's per regulation. Fire suppression systems, again, this is more for our commercial customers, multifamilies. These do require larger installations, these double check detector assemblies, and annual testing. And this is a question that we always get, so I like to put it in there. Who's responsible for what when it comes to this program? So we, as a utility, are responsible to protect the water produced and distributed, ensure compliance, utilize best practices, and then we have to maintain certain logs per the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals. The property owner is responsible for ensuring there's no cross connection on their premises, and they are also responsible for the cost of installation, operation, testing, and maintenance of any assemblies installed on their property, which includes the annual testing that must be completed by a plumber on our approved plumbers list. The plumber's requirements, they have to maintain their credentials. They have to register with the backflow software to get on the list. This is free of charge. So as long as you have your certifications and your credentials up to date, it is free to get on the list. And we encourage as many people as possible to do so. They, of course, have to adhere to the state sanitary code and then submit the reports through the software. And then our regulatory agency for this is the Louisiana Department of Health and Hospitals. Okay, this program, Backflow, was brought back in-house. It was done by a contractor and was brought back in-house several years ago. So this group has been building very successfully what that program looks like in the documentation of these policies and procedures. So this is their enforcement response and how they communicate their enforcement response. There's a lot of communication here, which is great. You can see you have letters, emails, whether they're going to the customer or the owner of the property. So as you start walking down this list, you can see it gets more severe. Specifically, once you have a show cause hearing with an associated penalty and a notice of judgment, that involves a hearing and judgment from a administrative hearing officer. So that's a third party external to us. We come in, we give the case, and judgment is rendered. So last April, there was a presentation to the plumbing group at the board of director level on having the ability to interrupt water service if there's non-compliance. So we have it in our options to exercise that right, but we wanted to bring it to the board because that would be different from how we've been operating. We believe we're ready to have that enforcement action, but it is an escalation of what we've done previously. So this would be the last step. 95 days overdue from that annual date would be an interruption in service. And so this would also be one of the things that we're asking y'all to vote on in regards to the resolution.
The trigger is, I guess, all backflow preventers are registered through your system. So that just, for example, the annual testing yearly, once it becomes overdue, that's what triggers 60 days prior saying you need to get it tested. Okay.
Yep.
That's the,
Yeah, so there are 8 mailed communications, 4 of them are certified mail, and then 5 email communications to get to that path. They've also had an in-person hearing and judgment determined by a third party before they've gotten to that level. So this is the very end of that path where the only mechanism we have to ensure compliance would be for interruption of water service at that location.
Question, the backflow prevention, installation, plumbing, that could have a substantial cost for the homeowner, the business owner, and the like. How is that factored into this process? I get the communication, that plan is great, but are there any considerations for cost and the entity is being imposed on?
Yes, so a lot of your costs for your residences are not significant. They could, if like, for example, an irrigation system, they can not have an automatic timer and plug and turn it on when they want to turn it on. There's also a plumbing piece that's about $10 that they can put in, and that satisfies the requirement. You know, your larger installations on commercials, yes, they can be expensive. They're large, they're big. They're also required for the health and safety of our residents. There's a reason why they're needed. And so this is not unique to us. This is required throughout the entire state. And, you know, we work with anyone installing it and try to be reasonable for the time frame for that specific reason. Say, okay, we know this is an issue. What is our plan to get it installed? So we're trying to work with our residents to, you know, protect everyone's health and safety, but be reasonable with the reality.
what would you estimate the average cost for a residence? You know, it's an old house and you just found out they didn't have a backflow preventer. What would the cost of installation of that be roughly?
It depends on what it is, to be honest with you. This is really not as impactful for our residents. It's more impactful for our commercial entities.
Yeah.
So the residents, generally, there's small things that they can do to become in compliance. And it's usually irrigation and pools. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
we're really talking about. And air gap is the free option.
Yeah. To be
But
clear,
there-
we're not requiring it on just a normal domestic water
Nope.
Connection. It's if it's irrigation really for a house, that's about it.
Irrigation pools
Or
is
a
pretty
pool,
much what
yeah.
you're fine. Occasionally, you have a water fountain out front. And then, you know, these customers, they're receiving letters. If we visually see that there's something that could potentially be a backflow situation, they have contact, we're talking with these customers, you know, so they understand what's going on. The big impact from a financial perspective is for our commercial and multifamilies.
Yeah.
2 questions, just to make sure that we're clarifying. So I see the mail, the email, the certified mail. Are we abandoning the practice of tacking things on the door, or is that still a practice?
I'm not sure where we are on that. I'm not sure. Ah, nice.
Nye Henderson, I'm the backflow program officer.
Thank you for being here.
My name is Nye Hendrickson, and I'm the project manager for the backflow section. Some of you have probably met me before, I'm sorry. We have just started this, or we will start in 2026. We will be starting when we go out and survey and tack something on when we find a hazard on a premises. So we will have a little door hanger that we leave on the customer's door saying, hey, we came here, we found that you have an irrigation system. Please contact us because you will need to do something, or maybe we can find an alternate route. For most of our residential customers, it is something like an irrigation system or a swimming pool, and you always have the option, you know, you could take your irrigation system out, you could find a different way to water your flowers, or if you have a swimming pool, most swimming pools are already filled via an air gap, like you fill it up with a garden hose. That is also an option, and most people don't realize that, oh, I could just fill it up with a garden hose instead of flipping a switch and having an automatic system that might cost me money down the line. So when it also comes with our commercial customers, we do offer action plans as a way for them to tell us, okay, I'm gonna have to install something, this is gonna be very expensive, it's gonna take some time. Often with our fire sprinkler systems, they're gonna need to reevaluate their process, they're gonna have to do flow tests, they might even have to install a pump to have enough pressure. In those cases, we communicate with our customers, we tell them, hey, you give me an action plan of how long this is gonna take you, what's feasible for you. And then we just go along with that plan. And so the customer will set the due date for when they think that they can get this done. That's something that we offer for our commercial customers when they have a pretty large installation.
And before you sit down real quick, so just going over, so we have mail, email, certified mail, there's action plans. And on the portal, is there a notification that, hey, issue as well? It says something there?
So that the portal is something that the customers can log into as well. They have like a customer, there's 3 portals. There's my portal, there's the plumber's portal, and then there's the customer portal. It's all Aqua Resource. So the portal will send them an email 60 days before their due date, and they will send one 30 days before their due date. I will also send them a physical mail, like a letter, reminding them of these things. So all customers that have given us email addresses will also receive all of these notifications via email.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
I know this new timeline is 95 days. What has it been in the past?
So we haven't gotten to the interruptions of service. So we were stopping at the notice of judgment invoice letter. We have not shut off water for non-compliance yet, and that's why we're here. We would like to be able to take the next step. Okay. And our last area is pressure monitoring. So these are those 4,600 super smart meters we were talking about. You can see the distribution throughout the city. We've got a lot of great coverage, which is nice. And here's an example of why. So those different points throughout the system, it kind of gives us an idea of what's going on underneath the ground. For us, the temperature sensors aren't really as important as like folks up north. But what is very important to us is pressure. So that map allows us to understand the pressure on what's going on from point to point, and allows us to start isolating potential things going on in that distribution network, things like buried bottlenecks. So for an example, there was a valve that was closed, and we were able to determine where that valve was closed and show in the pressure mapping, this doesn't make sense that this pressure dropped from here to here. So we started isolating down and down and down. This valve was failed closed. You can see the change in pressure when that valve was fixed. So this is probably the highest pressure we've seen in Little Woods in the lower 9th Ward in the last decade. It's really, really exciting, right? And so that capacity and that pressure allows any kind of, if there is a main break, if there is an inadvertent, fire situation with a fire hydrant, it has that capacity to keep us above that boil water level. So this is super exciting. It's awesome job by the networks team to be able to identify this and then get the repair in place. So that is how we're using the pressure monitoring in real time. And that's all I have, unless there's any further questions.
So what is the communication to the citizens regarding these new changes? What does that look like? Is there something that's going to go out via email? Is there going to be public service announcements, or just so that we're communicating to everyone, these are the changes, even what she said regarding those action plans, if there's issues, how do we get that to people so that way they're aware before we just say, hey, we're about to do this and drop this on you?
Sure. Well, the first step is, of course, to come to y'all, right? Because y'all are a great voice for that. We'd also be communicating with all of our staff because they, family and friends, and they're also customers. And then we'll be posting on the website in regards to these changes. It's also going to be in scripts for all of our customer service reps. So if there's any questions, they can answer those. And we can also push notifications through our customer portal so that customers are aware of these changes. So those are all ways that we can push that information out to customers before. And the amount of customers we're talking about that would be hitting these severe levels is very small. We're not even talking about 100 customers. We're talking about a much smaller number than that. So these are also customers that we've had a lot of communication with and are very well versed in talking with us. And so we'd make sure that they would know that that was coming.
Well, if we could just, if it can be an email that goes on a billing or something like that. The reason why I'm saying that is if I don't go to the customer service center, if I don't talk to staff, if I didn't go to the website, I still would want to know these things, the updates and things like that, that's coming the way, our way, even if it's on a next billing cycle so that people understand, hey, there are some changes, just in being proactive. That's my thoughts, if you could.
Director Thomas, I really like that idea, and I will steal it and do it and put it on the board. But I did want to also just kind of jump in as well, because a lot of what Becca spoke about today, and I spoke, I think it was in front of the F&A committee, about the new rules and regulations documents, and a lot of this stuff is going to be, I think all of it, right, is incorporated into that document as well, which is going to be communicated. We're working with Sierra to put out communications as well, and things like that. So it kind of all ties together. So hopefully there will be multiple points of communications to people in the community.
That's really appreciated.
It is. Just thinking about all of these processes that we talked about with enforcement, it's going to come with increased fines, fees associated with it, and increased penalties. So making sure that the public is aware. And then the go live date, or I saw January 2026. So is that when we want all of these changes to be effective?
Yes.
That doesn't give us a lot of time
No, it doesn't.
to communicate before the changes are effective.
Well, we can adjust. We can adjust. I know that you've been working also with Sierra to have different talks about what we can do. Now,
So we have talked with these customers also about potential escalations, that are within the board's purview. So while we haven't enforced those to this point, they are aware that there are more severe allowances there for us. So, but the actual start of these fine implications, we can adjust what that makes sense if we need to for customer communication so that people are aware of what's coming.
Yeah, I would hate to ratify something in December and
Yeah.
the changes to be effective January 1, 2026.
Because this is the thing. If I'm not an offender, you all have given great communication of things that everyone should be aware of, right? So it should be public knowledge, not just based upon me breaking a rule, right? So that everyone understands, hey, these are the new processes, and at least get a couple billing cycles of that communication that, hey, we're about to start live with this. And even if there are processes or something for the commercial customers as well, let them have it on their billing cycle so that they can see as well that, hey, dealing with backflow, all this great information, people just have to be aware. If they don't talk to anyone, and if they're not going to the website, because I'm not going to the website every day, but it's an awesome website. But but just in case, I still want to be informed, so we're all speaking the same language, and your grandmother, someone understands that there are changes in the policy, and they've seen it at least twice. At least twice.
So is there I guess a start date in this resolution, and can we amend that?
It's not
I
written.
read through, it's not written.
Yeah, I don't think there's a start date in the resolution.
No.
No, there's
So,
not.
Yeah, I would imagine you get the resolution authorizing the changes, and then you can modify.
We can adjust the date.
Adjust the start date.
So with the second quarter 2026, would that give enough time? That's 3 months to, okay. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution R179, 2025.
So
Megan,
moved.
moved by Director Thomas, second by Director Duplessis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes with the understanding we'll begin in Q2 of 2026. Okay, we've already handled the other resolution. Are there any public comments?
There is, Chair.
All right.
Jesse Perkins.
Good morning.
Hey, Mr. Perkins.
Operations Committee, right?
Yes, sir.
Good morning to you all, and just going to ask you all to have patience with me and bear with me while I read this statement. All right, so at this point, as we are entering into 2026, it feels urgent to name that we are in need for the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans to 100% support a clear and comprehensive plan to shore up the drainage system. We also know that this can and should happen without adding any additional rate increases, fees, or changes of any kind to the residents. The public justifiably has no confidence that if our current public funds are not stewarded well, asking for more is not suddenly going to be the solution. The current solution involves ensuring current budgets are aligned to the most pressing needs and they are spent in the most effective and efficient ways. Therefore, to assist in this happening, we are making the following recommendations on how we believe this can happen. Number one, local governing bodies must commit to being deeply responsible to aligning budget to prioritized needs. Drainage is a huge need. Number two, the $25 to $40 million that the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans needs for drainage should be secured and allocated in 2026 for the purpose of hiring for a designated team of workers dedicated specifically to drainage. We need a team of recruited local residents who are well-trained, paid training, and retained for these roles, living wages, and safe and supported work conditions. Number three, ensure that the recruitment begins as soon as possible. Treat this as an emergency mission to get ahead in prevention of future preventable catastrophe. This helps eliminate the high cost of an outside third-party contract. The current contract is not yielding the work outcomes justified to the cost. Therefore, these dollars should be redirected to hiring local workers at a living wage. Now, we do not know what has already been decided about the $50 million bond that taxpayers voted for this past November 15, 2025. But by the time that money is even accessible to the city, it could be around the same time next year. We need action that demonstrates a kind of urgency to matches the need for 100% of drainage lines to be cleaned and cleared, repaired when needed, and working at full capacity. This is separate from and in addition to an efforts on green infrastructure. This is not a one or the other conversation. We need a work team within the Sewage and Water Board of New Orleans that is 100% dedicated to drainage.
Mr. Perkins, we need to wrap it up. You're over time.
And we need it started as soon as possible. Thanks for your cooperation and thanks for your undivided attention, and let it sink in, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Okay, if there are no other matters, may entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Director Thomas, second. By Director Duplessis, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are now adjourned.